Of this.
Can I get my
Fuck
can I get to my podcast?
Fuck off.
Hello, welcome to my podcast. Welcome to the Go Grab That Day YouTube channel. Another episode of Kombat Kingdom. I tell you the number, but I don't know and can never remember. 30?
I think so.
My producer and partner and everything else has told me that episode number 30. So Kombat Kingdom number 30. Fuck, I can't wait to get some artwork for it and stuff like that. Yeah, hope everyone's doing well. Sorry, I'm talking to myself, but anyway. Yeah, another episode, Kombat Kingdom, here we go. So yeah, hope everyone's doing well. Please keep supporting us and stuff like that. I know I always say it, but I'm going to keep saying it. Because as I said, we're going through a little bit of a quiet patch with the podcast and the platform and all that. The stuff happening in the background, as I've said a million times. I'm kind of getting sick of saying it now myself, so I'm sure you're getting sick of saying it, so I won't dwell on it for too long. But anyway, let's get into the episode. Hope everybody's... I wish I had a radio voice like that. Well, you're tuning in to Go Grab That Day. And, sorry. Anyway, yeah, so let's get into some fights. But yeah, I hope everyone's doing well. Please keep supporting us. And we do have some fun stuff coming up, I promise you. Just try and support us as much as you can. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Give some of the videos a like, maybe. Give them a share. Most importantly, please subscribe if you haven't done so. It supports us big time. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah, hope everyone's doing well. We're on lockdown over here, so I'm kind of going insane, which is why my voice is mad to get into this. I'm quite hyper, and yeah. So, fights. Let's talk about them. So we had if you want to call it a small card in MMA terms and UFC terms, Edson Barbosa versus Giga Chikadze. So let's have a look at the prelims first. Yeah, like reading this card from top to bottom before you watch it, you wouldn't have... you're going to look at it as a small card, but the fights were very good from start to finish. Even through the prelims, there were some great fights all the way down. Some of the tough finalists were brilliant, which... You know, not a lot of people knew who they were if you haven't watched the season. I didn't watch the season yet. But yeah, some fun fights that came out of that as well. Fun characters, which we'll get to in a bit. But quickly running down through the card. Of course, we're going to touch on the circus. Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. But I'm sure I'll rant about that later. So anyway, starting from, as I said, the opening to the closing. We had Mana Martinez defeating... I don't know, is it Guido? I find it's Guido. Guido Canetti, is that his name? Or is it Guido? I don't know. I don't know, Guido, quite offensive, but anyway. Canetti, but anyway, yeah, Mana Martinez winning that fight via decision. And then we had Pat Sabatini defeating Jamal Emmers via submission. And then we had, I think it was a bit of an upset of the night, was JJ Aldrich beating Vanessa Demopoulos via decision as well. And we had, after that, Dustin Jacoby defeating Darren the Dentist Stewart, which, if I'm not wrong, I believe Darren Stewart was released from the UFC after that loss. Or at least, I saw it on the news somewhere, which is quite surprising. I think Darren Stewart is always kind of a fun fighter, but he does have a few losses alright on his record. And of course, getting TKO'd in this one as well is not good. But I'm sure somebody will pick that guy up. He is a fun character, and he is a good fighter. Packs a lot of power. I was quite surprised they let him go. The UFC are weird in their decisions sometimes. And then next we had Wellington Turman defeating Sam Alvey. Your typical Sam Alvey fight. Just a war over and back. Kind of strange. You know, Wellington Turman having had 2 points taken away from him and still managed to win the fight. I wasn't sure. I believe he was winning the fight before the points. You know, if you hadn't have had the points taken away, but it was pretty close. But I'm not going to get into too much about the way the judges score things, because I'll be all day ranting. But of course, by the end of Sam Alvey not happy with the result. Who, to be fair, you know, is usually kind of a very... It's not that he was disrespectful, but usually he doesn't let his emotions show like that. But having had Sam on the podcast before, and listening to his opinion, sometimes he has been kind of screwed over by judges in the past, so you can understand that. He wasn't happy, but still, as always, he was very respectful to his opponent, stuff like that. But Sam has had a few losses on his record now. But to be fair, I think somebody had spoke to Dana White in the press conference afterwards, asking him about. I think it was afterwards, or it could have been in the build-up, but I'm pretty sure it was afterwards. And he had said that Dana White said he loves guys like Sam Alvey because they always take fights. There's no, and he does give me that impression. But I just know some people have been asking questions as to why, maybe Darren Stewart is gone and Sam Alvey is still there. But I think that's why. I think it's because when you're a guy who's willing to take any fights, plus you got to remember Sam Alvey has fought across 3 different divisions, I believe. Which it's a great person to have as part of your stable of fighters. But it's a shame when, the judges, I don't want to say he was robbed in that fight because I don't think he was. But I believe Sam doesn't have much of a liking towards MMA judges these days. But a good win on the record of Wellington Turman. He needed a win too badly. And then we move on to the closing of the prelims, which was clearly the knockout of the night. But Abdul Razak Al Hassan defeating Alessio Di Chirico via knockout 17 seconds into the first round. My God, was it a heavy knockout. Shin right to the head. Di Chirico was kind of leaning into it, but Al Hassan just put everything into the kick and he knocked him out cold. Vicious knockout. The sound of it was like a baseball bat hitting concrete. It was insane, but what a win for Al Hassan. Di Chirico was not an easy guy to get out of there. And to do it in 17 seconds is pretty impressive. And that is the prelims. We're running through this card pretty quick, but that's the prelims done and dusted. And then the opener of the main card was Gerald Meerschaert versus Mahmoud Muradov. This was a pretty crazy fight too, considering Meerschaert was getting pretty dominated in the opening few minutes or the opening round, and it looked like it was going to be a bad night for him. He did get caught heavy a couple of times, but he just kind of kept coming forward, and he started to kind of get his rhythm a little bit, and he was catching Muradov with his some overhands, just awkward shots, and he was catching him a little bit, and then he did rock him, and when he got him down, Meerschaert's submissions are, he's pretty underrated for what he can do on the ground. And he finished him, hooked in the choke and got it done. But it was completely against, as they say in football, it was completely against the run of play. Like Meerschaert was not really in that fight until a couple of brief moments here and there, but credit to him when he, like a shark, when he saw blood, he attacked and he got Muradov out of there. But just kind of never say die attitude. It was a really good finish and proper come from behind performance. So credit to Meerschaert for that. And then we had Andrei Petroski beating Michael Gilmore via KO TKO round 3. And then the one I wanted to talk about was Mr. Kevin Lee versus Daniel Rodriguez. This obviously was a big fight for Kevin Lee, having been out. I think he's been out close to 2 years, if I'm not wrong. Definitely been out for at least a year. Number of things between injuries and recurring injuries and stuff like that. Kevin Lee he's a bit of a mystery because the guy has all the talent, all the he has that character that could become could have been a superstar in the UFC. And I don't know, he just doesn't seem to put it together. For me, he looked smaller. He looked smaller in welterweight, in my opinion, and then he kind of almost is too big to get down to lightweight. He's one of those guys who they say are in-betweeners, But I don't know. For me, he didn't look. He looked tentative in this fight, and he took some. He always seems to take heavy shots, especially in his last You know, when Kevin Lee first started coming on the scene, he was this guy who not too many people wanted to fight. And he seemed to have a little bit of everything, you know, from his wrestling to his little bit of jiu-jitsu, and his striking wasn't bad either. Just for me lately, it doesn't look as good. I don't know what it is, whether it's a number of things, you know, confidence and stuff like that. Daniel Rodriguez, on the other hand, is a guy who's kind of on the way up. He fights with Cowboy and what is his name? Yeah, it's not coming to me, but the kickboxer, I can't think of his name. As always, when I do this fucking podcast, I can't think of names. But yeah, we'll put the name up here anyway. The guy I was thinking of that trains with the BMF Ranch and all of those guys. But yeah, Daniel Rodriguez trains with those guys. Fun guy. He's quite a fun character too. Big win for him against Kevin Lee. It's massive for him. Yeah, I just don't know. Kevin Lee has had a couple of, you know, hit or miss performances. He needs a win. He needs to kind of start to get a bit of rhythm behind him, or you might look at him. He could be one of these what ifs, you know, or you know what may have happened. That could be the career of Kevin Lee when we look back, which is a shame because he has all that ability. He's with a great camp now. He's with Faraz Sahabi and those guys at TriStar, I believe, is the name of the gym. Yeah, it's just strange. I don't know what to really put it down to. He just seems tentative. That's my honest opinion. Now, he did come out, fair enough, saying, which is true, he came out kind of saying he was happy enough with his performance, that, you know, it was nice to get back in there, which is, you know, it's a good way to accept the loss at the very least. And hopefully it will boost his confidence, and then he come back for, you know, maybe get another fight in there. It might look a lot different next time. That's something, when you're out that long, you know, sometimes it can be excused, but just I don't know, in my opinion, I haven't seen. Yeah, I don't know what it's a bit like the you know, kind of similar to kind of Tyron Woodley when he was on his slide. Just like the confidence isn't there. That I don't know what it is exactly, but hopefully he can get it right. I think people have to remember too that he did lose. You know, his one of his main coaches a couple of years ago died as well before he moved to TriStar, which is tough. You know, a guy that had been coaching for a long time. I can't remember that guy's name either, but yeah, so it could be a number of things, you know, and injuries will always do that. I know he struggled with staph infections, making weight, things like that, which is tough. But good to see him back nonetheless, you know, and interesting to see who they give him next. I think I saw some things on Twitter between himself and the name is here. That's the guy. My God, my brain is just bucked. Yeah, Kevin Lee have been having her over and back with this particular fighter. I can't think of his name right now. It's going to drive me crazy. Every time I get on this podcast, names just. Yeah, moving on to the next fight before I go fucking crazy. So then it was on to the Ultimate Fighter finalists. And we had, in the first fight was Ricky, I believe pronounced his name, Tercios. Ricky Tercios versus Brady Heiston. This was a great fight. A really good fight from both guys. It was such a high-paced, just a heavy pace, and kind of one of those fights if you ever wanted to show somebody MMA for the first time. You know, if you want to get somebody interested, this is the kind of fight you would show. Heavy pace, a mixture of wrestling, grappling, striking. You know, you're kind of unsure. It looked like Brady Heiston was going to take over the fight from the beginning. He looked really good. His wrestling looked good. And Ricky Tercios then just showed this kind of, you know, this grit and determination, and he's very unconventional with the way he does things sometimes, but getting the crowd hyped and he was shouting at Brady and stuff like that, it was fun, very fun to watch, and Ricky Tercios getting the decision in the end, but man, was it a fun fight, and definitely I believe Brady Heiston deserves to get a chance in the UFC as well. It was a very fun fight, and it goes to show that they are, let's hope, still breeding some good characters coming out of the Ultimate Fighter. Because I definitely believe Ricky Tercios he's going to be a fun guy to look at. He, you know, his interviews are fun, the way he acts. He's a little too kind of, my opinion, his interview in the cage was a little too like Miss World, you know. I want world peace and all this. I thought he went a little bit over the top, just my opinion. But nevertheless, he's a fun character. In the post-fight press conference, he was quite fun, and he ended up finishing by fucking singing a song for 2 or 3 minutes. Not sure what it was about, but it was fun. He had his own little microphone and speaker that he brought with him prepared, so no doubt he'll be, I believe Dana White called him like the Diego Sanchez part 2 or whatever you call him, but like he has that kind of air about him, that Diego Sanchez madness. But yeah, fun character and a great addition to the UFC, and hopefully, as I said, Brady Heiston will get his chance as well. And then moving on to the heavier boys, for the tough final was Brian Battle versus Gilbert Urbina. The Urbinas, oh my god, like this is the third brother that has been in the Ultimate Fighter house, and just they've not been able to get over that line of winning the Ultimate Fighter. And Hector Urbina was the one I remember, and was it Roger Urbina maybe? But there was definitely a Hector, then there was Gilbert, and there was another guy, but all three have been in the Ultimate Fighter and just haven't been able to get that win. But credit to him, he got to the final. I know he had to fill in for somebody else, but nevertheless, you got to take the chances you're given. It was a reasonable fight while it lasted, to be fair. Brian Battle, who I believe was a massive underdog to do well on the show, I think throughout the show, I think he had lost one of his first fights, and then he got another shot again to fill in for somebody else. But he was heavy underdog in his very first fight as well, in the house. So amazing story for him to go on and win. He's quite a fun character too. You know, he kind of reminds me of Forrest Griffin a little bit, which is obviously a massive thing to say, especially coming from Tough. But he just has that fun character about him where he's kind of accidentally funny a lot of the time. So yeah, he's a fun character too, and you know, getting the submission win in the second round is massive for him. Again, especially being such a heavy underdog. But yeah, brilliant. A couple of fun additions been added to the UFC there, and I've said it on this podcast many times how I'm a massive fan of the Ultimate Fighter. Always have been, and I'll gladly watch it come back. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I just am a fan of it. I love the whole setup of the show. I love that reality show mixed with fighting. It's just, that's the way I am. But yeah, I'm glad to see it back, and glad to see some fun characters come into the UFC, yeah. So harsh on those Urbina brothers, though, I have to say, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. Then moving on, we had the main event, of course, which everyone was pumped for this. Edson Barbosa versus Chikadze, which obviously this fight was going to be a striking war between the two guys. I think the thing that surprised a lot of people was Chikadze was faster than Barbosa, which I definitely didn't expect. I thought, if anything, maybe it would be the power going to Chikadze, not to say that Barbosa doesn't have power, but I just thought it would be speed versus power, kind of that way. But that was not the case. Barbosa's hands seemed to look a little better than Chikadze's, but yeah, Chikadze just seemed that bit faster. A little more. He got his rhythm going earlier. Barbosa seemed to struggle to get a rhythm. Not necessarily. I'm not too sure why, but he seemed to struggle to kind of get his range and his rhythm going. Which that's kind of how you beat him, is getting him out of his rhythm. But great win for Chikadze. He's one to look out for. I know I think he called out Max Holloway, if I'm not wrong, which I think, you know, literally for that, in my opinion. But nevertheless, he's going to prove to be a problem for a lot of guys in that division. His striking is insane. When you go up and you beat Barbosa at his own game, that tells you how good of a striker you are. But yeah, he's I don't want to say he put his name out there, because he already kind of had his name out there, but definitely this is a massive win for him, and it will be interesting to see who he gets next. In terms of Barbosa, it's tough because he has looked good in his last couple of fights, and I don't know if anyone saw actually during the week. I did share it on the Instagram, I believe. There was a video that went out between Edson Barbosa and his son. It was such a nice video. I definitely shared it, but I don't know if anyone has seen it. But we'll put the link up for it here anyway. You can watch it. It's a really nice video of him and his son just kind of talking. But you'll see, you watch it yourselves, it's a very, you know, if you didn't love Barbosa beforehand, you'll love him even more after the video. And I am a massive Barbosa fan. I was rooting for him in this fight. Just, he's one of those, again, I had a friend of mine saying he's the most talented guy to not win a title, which I think is a great way to put it. Which he is. He's a fantastic fighter, but very respectful. That kind of gives that true martial artist kind of character. So I was really rooting for him in this fight. But of course, Chikadze, it's his time now. He's kind of new-ish to the UFC and new-ish to MMA. So it is his time. Barbosa's been doing it for a long time. So it's good to see a little bit of fresh blood in there. But hopefully Barbosa sticks around. I know he's getting a little bit older, especially in MMA years. But he still has the ability to put on some fun fights, as we've seen in the last fight, especially after dropping down in weight class, which you wouldn't expect. But yeah, he's still a fun fighter, a fun character, and you know, I am and always will be a big fan of him. So yeah, that's pretty much the card gone down through already. Like I said, it was a small card on paper, but it was actually really fun to watch. But yeah, we'll have a quick look at what's coming up next week. So we have a reasonable card as well next week. Of course, it's a fight night, but it's the Derek Brunson versus Darren Till. So yeah, this is going to be on it's in the Apex, but I believe they have it at an awkward time. If you're in America, or I think if you're this side of the world, it's on at a bit of a weird time because they're kind of setting it up for a lot of the UK fans. I think they have a lot of UK fighters fighting. You know, obviously Darren Till. But running down through the card, we have Jonathan Martinez versus Marcelo Rojo. What is this name? Okay, I'm gonna try. We have Dalcha Longiambula versus Marc-Andre. Fucking hell, why did they do this to me? Marc-Andre Barriult, something like that. So those two guys are fighting. And then we have Julian Erosa versus Charles Jourdain. Jack Shore versus Ludwig Shaolnian. Man, these are the toughest names I've ever seen. Why are you doing this to me, UFC? And we have Molly McCann versus Ji Young Kim. And that closes out the prelims. I believe Molly McCann is from the UK, isn't she? If I'm not wrong. And then I have Paddy Pimblett making his UFC debut. Paddy was a Cage Warriors superstar, isn't he? From Europe, but he's from the UK, but obviously Cage Warriors is a big European thing. So Paddy Pimblett versus Luigi Vendramini. And then we have Modestas Bakuskas versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. Oh, is that Roundtree's fights? He's a horrendous left high kick. Alex Morona versus David Sawada. Tom Aspinall versus Sergey Spivak. And then Darren Till versus Derek Brunson. Yeah, so you see we have obviously Paddy Pimblett, Tom Aspinall, Darren Till, and I believe Molly McCann, all from the UK. I think they're the only ones. But yeah, it's set up, you know, for the kind of UK fans, I believe. So it will be on at an awkward time. But nevertheless, we'll all watch it, I'm sure. That's that fight. And then we're going to move on to quickly talking about the Jake Paul Tyron Woodley fight. So yeah, I kind of have, I don't know what I think about these things anymore. Because the more I think Jake Paul is going to lose, the more he seems to win. So yeah, I don't know. I see there's a lot of boxing, I don't say a lot. There's a few boxing fans I know they're not happy about this whole circus thing, which I can understand. Same time, it's kind of doing it's a bit like Conor McGregor, you know, you can't, it's all people talk about now is Jake Paul and stuff like that and who he's fighting next. And it just, I don't know, it gets sickening. It gets sick of hearing about it. Even when this fight came on, I was almost glad to be watching it so it would be over. You know, and I'm a fan of Woodley. I don't completely hate the Paul brothers. They do irritate the shit out of me, but I don't really hate them. I don't have a dislike for them completely. Just they are very irritating. Let's be honest. But in terms of this fight and the fight card, for what I paid attention to, you know, I watched the Tommy Fury fight, which wasn't great, to be fair. Like, it wasn't. Of course, I've said on this before, I'm not the biggest boxing fan, so when I judge it as a casual, but maybe a little more than a casual. Yeah, probably a casual. But you know, I judge it kind of. I tread carefully because I don't want to give too much an opinion on it when I'm not exactly a big fan of boxing. I truly amn't. And one of the main reasons is I don't know why they do it. Obviously they have a reason for it, but I cannot stand why they drag it out so long. It goes on for so fucking long. It's insane. By the time the main fight's coming, like, you just want it to be over. Maybe I've just become too used to it. It's not because I've become too used to MMA, because I remember watching boxing years ago, and I always found it was way too long as well. Can they not just bring it in a little bit, and you don't have to have a press conference or a big discussion between every fight? I don't know, it irritates me. And also, performers walking out with the fighters, I hate that too. I think I just hate boxing. But anyway, no, I don't. But in terms of the entire card, yeah, I was watching the Tommy Fury fight. Of course, see how he was. I didn't know a lot about him. Of course, I've heard of him being, Tyson Fury's brother and all that. Yeah, he didn't look great. Of course, it's his American debut and all that. It's more eyes than he's ever had on him when he's boxing. He fought an awkward opponent. But it was awkward, but he fought like normally at 135. I think 135, 145 was, I can't even think of that guy's fucking name now. You're gonna have to edit this part out, Gabby. No, it's okay, just let me find this guy's name.
How are you gonna find?
It can be here somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, Anthony Taylor was who Tommy Fury fought. But yeah, so watching the fight, I know I'd heard Anthony Taylor was an MMA fighter, wasn't really a boxer and all that, so I figured he obviously made it a bit awkward. He's not the usual style that Tommy Fury be used to fighting. But then when I'd heard that he was a natural 135 to 145 pound fighter, I couldn't believe it. Like that, I can understand. At first I thought the criticism of Tommy Fury was a little harsh, considering, it was his debut on American TV. He had a lot of pressure on him coming in as Tyson Fury's brother. But when you fight a guy that's normally that much lighter, it's insane. Yeah, it was a poor performance. Just thought there's not a lot you can say other than that. It was a very, very poor performance. And I can understand why people now think Jake Paul will beat him if they fight. For me, again, I'm not going to put a lot of weight on these things because there's so much talk about it, and I know, with respect to boxing, this is me being honest, even though I like to shit on boxing, but with respect to boxing, I'm not going to put too much weight on all of this. And like Tommy Fury is not exactly representing boxing just yet, neither is Jake Paul, so I don't want to, of course it's still a great sport, I'm not going to shit on it too much. I'm just going to give my thoughts on this fight card. But so I can understand why people think that if Tommy Fury and Jake Paul were to fight, that Jake Paul would probably beat Tommy Fury. If that even happens, I don't know. I mean, Jake Paul will have to definitely step up in class. But anyway, to run through the rest of the fights. So I did see the Daniel Dubois fight. It was probably the only one that was somewhat exciting. Let's just skipping on to the main fight, obviously Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley. Of course, me as an MMA fan and just as a fan of life in general, I wanted Jake Paul to lose this fight. I've been sick of hearing about him, sick of he and his brother. The credit to them, for starters. Credit to them what they're doing. There's no taking it away from them. The guys are making a lot of money And it is true that they could be making money doing anything else. They really could. But it's the arrogance of them I don't like. It's the disrespect to other boxers and other people. Of course, that's how they get their money. I know that. I understand. But doesn't mean that I can't have an opinion against them. I just don't like it. I don't like the way they act, the way they go around, because you know that without their team around them, those two guys would not be as brave as they are. Because let's be honest, if Tyron Woodley bumped into Jake Paul in the street, I know it doesn't matter in this sense, but it's just that's why I look at it that way, that Tyron Woodley would fold him like a pretzel. But in terms of this boxing event, Woodley's had the same issue that he's always had, just not pulling the trigger. He 100% hurt Jake Paul at one point, put him through the ropes, pretty much, and that wasn't even counted as a knockdown, which is another thing that's pretty bad, but I don't think it would have mattered in the end. But yeah, Woodley just didn't pull the trigger. He's had that same issue in a lot of his fights in the end, coming towards the end of his MMA career. While I will shit on this event a little bit, I'm not buying the bullshit that it was a fixed fight, that Woodley deliberately held off to get paid. I don't believe that for 1 second. You're talking about a legit world champion, in Tyron Woodley. There's no money in the world that they would accept that, getting beaten by, if you want to go YouTuber, even though Jake Paul, let's be honest, he can box. For 1 second I don't. What annoys me about this shit is you have people who will say, afterwards, the same way they said it after the Askren fight, oh, this shit is fixed, he clearly got paid. That if that's the case, then you should believe it's fixed beforehand and not bother watching it. You can't watch it and then because the result goes the way you didn't expect it to go, oh, it's fixed, oh, it's fucking bullshit, that's fixed. This fight was not fixed. Woodley lost fair and square, didn't pull the trigger. That's literally what happened. Jake Paul just did more. Didn't do a lot, but he did more. He was, I know he was backing up all the time, but he did more. He threw more punches. Didn't do any harm. Woodley done more, if you want to call it damage, but he didn't do enough. Woodley just didn't fire enough, and I believe if he had, he probably could have won that fight. But it was his. I honestly believe it was his fight to lose, and he lost. That's it. What more can you do? You got to listen to Jake Paul for another while. But yeah, I don't know. I am glad it's over and done with, but of course it's only going to add more fuel to the fire. Now we're going to hear more about them and who's he fighting next, and he's going to fight Canelo, he's going to fight McGregor, he's going to fight all of these. I don't know, but yeah, I'm not going to lie, it's a little entertaining, it's also infuriating too, because I just think it takes the shine off a lot of other great fighters and great fights, especially guys who've been doing it for a long time. And I know I say that all the time, but I can't help it. It will be, yeah, as I said, it'll be interesting to see who he fights next. I know Anderson Silva has been spoken about because, of course, he's now boxing and he beat Chavez Jr. recently. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, in terms of the fight itself, there was no fix, there was no paid, there was no brown envelope being handed to Woodley because he, held back. That's just Woodley, he just didn't pull the trigger. People got to remember is Woodley is not a legit striker. I'm not just saying that now because he lost, he isn't. You go back and watch his MMA career, he's not a guy who's going to be throwing heavy, double jabs, combinations. He always mixed up heavy strikes with his takedowns. That was the way he fought. He'd throw a couple of punches or, he'd fake a takedown, catch you with something heavy. But he was never a heavy combination guy. You're not going to get massive, 3-punch, 4-punch combinations. That's not usually what he done. He carries power and he could use that power. But again, that's mixing it in with everything else. So this isn't a giant shock. It really isn't. And it is down to Woodley not pulling the trigger. I truly believe that. I may, just for the fun of it, if I can get I'm going to get somebody on to discuss this. Just, again, I know I've had Ian on in the past and stuff like that, but I want to get someone on and have a proper in-depth talk about the boxing side of things, because yeah, I know some boxing fans are not happy with all of this, so I can understand that. But of course, I have to talk about it because everyone else is talking about it. I can't just ignore it because, and I did watch it. Let's be honest, I did watch it too. Would I? Let's say the UFC or the MMA card is on while this is on. Will I watch it instead? Fuck no. I'll always watch the MMA first, but you know, it was on the following day, so of course I'm going to check it out. But it is, yeah, it's very circusy. It's very, I don't know. I am really kind of sick of it because it is at the same time. Let's be honest, Jake Paul is still picking fighters that suit him. I know Woodley has the power and all that, but when you think about it, he's still picking safe. So, yeah. Yeah, there's not a lot more to say. I am, again, honestly, quite glad to see it was over just so I'd at least spend a couple of days not having to listen about it. But then, of course, it goes straight into who's he going to fight next, you know. And they're picking up everything that they did and everything. Oh, it's just annoying. But credit to the two of them. The two boys are superstars. There's no denying that. They've shot themselves up as superstars. And again, let's not forget they really could be doing anything else. They don't have to be doing this. So you got to give a little bit of credit where it's due. Yeah, but I don't want to get in a big rant about all this boxing. But anyway, we'll leave it at that for this week, as there isn't a lot more to talk about other than look forward to next week's card. Not a lot of other stuff happening news wise. Of course, there is Conor McGregor's in talks, or people are talking about him because of course he's having banter over and back with Nate Diaz now again. They had a big exchange either today or yesterday on Twitter over and back, so possibly will they fight again? I know they will fight again, but will it be next is my question. He's also alluded to his two fights left on his contract, so I don't know what he's hinting at there. Be interesting to see. You know, maybe he'll see out his contract and he'll go and fight. I don't know. God fucking knows. It's a weird time in fight sports at the moment. Things are going a little crazy. But look, if you can't beat them, you may as well join them. So at least we'll talk about it, have a bit of fun, poke fun, rant and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's it for this week. I appreciate you tuning in, guys. Please, as I always say, subscribe if you haven't done already. Give the page a like. Give it a share. Talk about us, whatever you want to do, but make sure it's positive. Yeah, hope you're all good. Stay safe, keep supporting us, guys. Go grab that day. Peace.